to you. You don't want to fall into this box of like, you're not allowed to do anything. You just work out, sleep, eat, and that's it. No, like you can have a life. You can go out with friends, you can hang out, but it's also being um keeping that in mind, that like how far do you take it, how often do you do it, and still taking care, remembering like you're an athlete. This is your job. I always tell people like you're doing what you love, but it's your job. It's what pays your bills. It's when you're at the pro level, it's what's taking care of your family. So you have your job duties as well, and that's to take care of yourself. I recently had a conversation maybe about 2, 3 months ago with one of my best friends who just retired from professional soccer. And he was literally just retired this year. And I was telling him, like, you're going to go through this phase of, I'm not that professional athlete anymore. Who am I? What am I going to do? How do I keep doing my life? I'm like, you're not going to wake up early and go to training anymore. You're not going to finish training and have your meals for you. You're not going to finish training and have a massage therapist or a workout session. Like, and you have to figure out now with your life, like, what are you going to do and how can I continue to stay active? And if I do go into an office job now, or like whatever your next step is, how do I balance that life? We were recently in a U17 World Cup and we're about to go out in a game, and you see these athletes just feel all this pressure, and you kind of just have to tell them, hey, you love the game, enjoy the game, and let the rest of it take care at the end. Like, just go out there and enjoy. And as soon as you tell an athlete that, and you see that smile come back up and kind of their shoulders just relax.
Fantastic. All right, folks, I'm Sifu Slim, and I'm coming to you live from Vienna, Austria. I'm at a tennis center with 20 clay courts. We do footwork drills here, technical drills, mindset drills, all the psychology. We do nutrition. It's called Arsenal Tennis. And if you think professional sports and competitive sports are a battlefield, you came to the right place, because Arsenal in German, and we're in Austria, so they speak the Austrian form of German, which is a more pleasant, many people think, than the harsher German of Germany. This had tanks, and before tanks, it had horses and anything that was related to cannon. So the buildings here go back to the late 1800s, and that's where the main arsenal was of Vienna, Austria. Now, outside, where all those tanks and other things in World War II used to be stored, they're all gone. And a tennis center was built here, I believe, 30 years ago. And now there are 20 clay courts, which makes it a very large center. And my friend Randall, you could look up Arsenal Tennis, is an American guy who speaks German, and he and his wife own this lovely center. And this is where I come to train a little bit in the summertime, and it's wonderful. And we're working our podcast, we're working my books, The Aging Athlete, we're interviewing people, and we're just getting it on with performance and balance and all those things. And I'm pleased. So before we introduce our guests, take a moment, folks, and give us a thumbs up, give us a big like out there. It helps us bring this content to you and give you that information and that mindset message and motivation that we hope will help you advance yourself as a weekend warrior or a competitive athlete. So I'm going to bring in Stephanie Dominguez, and Stephanie can tell us a little bit about herself and where she's coming from right now across the ocean.
Well, thank you, Sifu, for having me and opening this space for me and inviting me. So like Sifu mentioned, my name is Stephanie Dominguez. currently one of two sports scientists on the men's youth national teams with U.S. Soccer. I'm currently in Chicago, but I tend to travel a lot as well around the world. Been with the federation for 2 years now. In June, I turned 2 years, and before that, I worked in men's pro soccer with the MLS at FC Dallas.
So, Stephanie, when you were a little kid, did your aunt, your mom, or your dad have a hard time keeping you sitting still? Were you a movement-oriented little gal?
I was, yeah. I grew up with my mom, and I was an only child. And I remember I would always say, "I'm bored. Like I want to like keep moving," and she'd try to keep me involved in different activities. Dance. I did a lot of dance and modeling at first, and then I got into sports, which was a big time change. But yeah, I always wanted to be active. I always had a hard time just staying home or sitting down. Was never like a video game gal or like any I don't know, any type of games to stay at home. I always wanted to be active.
So the interesting part of the story of athletes is why they got into their sport and why they got into training. So I would identify myself as a fitness athlete who does lots of sports. So my default setting is to do my fitness, my stretching, my functional training. And with that, of course, you need rest, you need nutrition, you need massage sometimes, tennis ball rolling, foam rolling, all these types of things. But when I was a little kid at age 6, I landed on America's #1 fitness pioneer, whose name is Jack LaLanne. He passed away at 96 in 2011. He was a petite guy, but pretty good set of shoulders and width on his wingspan. And he was a really hardworking guy. And he happened to be a non-wellness person when he was little. In the late teens and the early 20s, he got into ice cream, sugary food, desserts, and he didn't know about nutrition. So when he had boils breaking out on his skin, something that you only see with people who are like burn victims, unless you work in a hospital setting, he didn't want to go to school and he didn't know what to do. But his mom took him to see a famous nutrition expert, Bragg, just like the Bragg from the cider drinks. He went to see Mr. Bragg speaking in Berkeley, California, and he spent, after Mr. Bragg spoke, Paul Bragg is his name. He was older than Jack LaLanne by 20 some years, maybe even 30. He got to spend like an hour or two after this big seminar with Jack's mom, who was born in France, and he got Jack started on the idea that there is a way to fix what you've got going on, you 16-year-old kid with all these boils and this sugar addiction, and we'll help you transform. Here's my book. Here's what to do. They didn't have YouTube at the time, but he set him off on that path and he became this great fitness athlete. So I got into that when I was 6 years old. And by the time I was 10, I got my first weight set. It was 110 pounds and it came with a book. And that set me off on this way to do the fitness first. So me being an ectomorph, a thin person, I could use all that fitness and training and balance stuff and help me compete with the big mesomorphs and the ectomesomorph people who had this natural way to put on weight and muscle, and they had bigger bone structures, maybe more natural speed. So that's how I was able to get into that stuff and not lose hope, because there was a way to advance my skill and help me compete with these natural, what I would call, athletes. Over to Stephanie for her thoughts on my story, and maybe Stephanie can share her story of how she started the learning process about physical movement and recuperation and all these lovely things.
Well, Steve, that's very interesting. I just sharing your story. Thanks for sharing that. It's always, like you said, it's always interesting to see why different athletes, different sports get into the sport or a fitness lifestyle. So I appreciate you sharing that. And that's very unique as well. On my end, it was completely different. I think different areas, like I said, growing up. early age, I was a lot into just dance, modeling, more on that end of things. But I used to do a lot of dancing classes, rehearsals, and stuff like that. I still didn't know a lot about like the nutrition end or more of the fitness lifestyle, right? And then as I got older, my family, my cousins started getting involved in soccer, and that's when I would go and watch them train, and still I was like, oh, maybe sports is not a thing for me. Maybe I'm gonna continue dancing. And then one day I was there observing and watching, and I just told the coach, can you put me in training, please? I want to join what they're doing. So it was an all boys team, and he was like, sure, you can come join us. So at first it was just me joining them to train, and then eventually everything moved from there. So they started creating a team for me, a girls team, and as I started getting older, obviously going through like the high school age and then the college, then I started getting more into what nutrition was, what fitness, what I needed in my sport, to continue um, just being successful as an athlete. And then also one interesting thing on the nutrition part for me that we can obviously talk a little bit more about is I've been a vegetarian my whole life. So I actually have almost 9 years being vegan now, but I grew up as a vegetarian. My mom was a vegetarian when she was pregnant. So it's very interesting now telling the story of like, okay, I'm 30 and I've never had meat. Like I tried it when I was maybe 7 or 8. So it's always interesting to also share that part in how I was an athlete and in that diet. Not to say, obviously, Sifu, that everybody needs to practice this. I believe there's a lot of things out there that work, but it's something that I, as an athlete and as a person, had to also learn throughout the way, the process.
So yeah, it's fascinating. So from being in the womb, you were already a vegetarian, and I would guess at the time you were born, you were a less than 1% of people who had that experience.
Yes, absolutely. It's crazy to think about it now. Obviously, when I was born, I had no idea, but now, yeah, it's really cool. And I always say maybe one day they'll do a research project on me.
They should. They should, they should see how difficult it was for all the people moving the vegetables to get to you, all the non-meat products to get to you, because we do much more distance shipping every year. We have these container ships, we have airplanes, they're moving produce, and of course, beef. I know they have Kobe beef, and they have seafood that comes from Asia that winds up in New York. So all of these things are being moved all over the planet, and there is a compromise when you do that. Moving things at distance doesn't. It's not always a negative. There can be positives there, but it's just difficult energy wise and conservation wise to move food vast distances. Would you agree, Stephanie?
Absolutely, Sifu. I think, like I said, learning as I grew up, learning all that process, and you start realizing, like, wow, like food goes through this process to get to us, and yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
I did a video about a message the other day about some of the insane things that we do based on economics and poor planning. And one of the things is Santa Barbara, where I've lived off and on since 2004. It's been my main base. They have great lemon orchards. They also have great avocado orchards, and they have sea urchins and many other things out in the ocean. And what they do with their lemons, I was at a picnic, and I happened to be there doing a fitness program, and then I wound up doing some work on my laptop in my car, and then I went out, and they had those people setting up for the picnic, the lunchtime picnic at 10 in the morning, and I talked to the gentleman who was in his late 60s who worked for the Lemon Growers Association, and he started telling me things about where our lemons go from Santa Barbara, and they don't go to any of the stores in Santa Barbara. The big growers, they ship them all at great distance to people who pay top dollar for these phenomenal lemons that they have in Santa Barbara. And if you think that isn't loony, then I'd like to hear a different point of view that makes some sense of that. But over to Stephanie for her thoughts on this lunacy.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about it that way, and how much people are willing to obviously pay for these products, but also that the amount of movement that they go through before they get to the people that are going to consume sometimes, right? And yeah, it's incredible. That's something I still am fascinated about sometimes, or when I'm traveling into different countries and I'm like, okay, so what do you guys grow here? Like, what do you harvest here? Like, and where does it go? And it's very, very interesting to learn that.
And Santa Barbara is a very affluent place to be. It's your starter home is a million three, maybe be a million six now. It just goes up so much, and so those people can afford top quality things. So many of those people probably go to the farmers market and get local lemons. So that's a positive. But for these, the stores like the Safeways and the Ralphs and whatever, the Albertsons, the supermarkets out there, all of their stuff that they sell has to be brought in from other places, probably a lot from California. But according to the 2004 information that I had from this Lemon Growers Association guy, it wasn't the stuff we had wasn't staying to go into those the larger supermarket stores that we had available for us in Santa Barbara.
Wow, that's very interesting because you're moving product out and then bringing product in, so from a different place.
A lot of effort and a lot of fuel and a lot of time that goes in all that. So you mentioned travel, and I've done some traveling. Matter of fact, the last time I came to Vienna was June of last summer, and when I got here, I would call it a severe bout of jet lag, and part of it was because there was noise and there was heat. There was a heat wave when I got here last summer, so I couldn't just turn on an air condition, I have a fleece hat that I pull down over my head and over my eyes, and that blocks out all light. And then I have a waterfall on my laptop, which I downloaded from YouTube. So I put that on full blast and a nice waterfall. So I had the waterfall, I had the hat, but I didn't have air conditioning. And then I had the idea of going out I had this really cool balcony with some wonderful couches, like a sectional, like a light, like a textile sectional. And I went out there, and then about 2 in the morning or 3, the local rooster, and this isn't a city, this is a city of some 2 million people. There was one rooster, and I just guesstimated based on all of the 8 and 10-story buildings near me that were apartments and condos, that this rooster was keeping up 1,500 people if they didn't have air conditioning and had their windows open, starting at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I had a really hard bout of jet lag, so much so that my friend who owns this tennis center, when I first met him, he said I look like a drug addict, and that's not at all who I am, but that's what I looked like to him. And so he had to hear that story. So over to Stephanie for some thoughts on jet lag and the rigorous travel scenario and program that these athletes have to deal with, and then getting into their training and their game playing at an hour that could be their former morning hour, now it's their evening hour, and vice versa. So let's hear Stephanie on that.
Sifu, it's been a learning curve for me when I joined, obviously, the federation, because of the amount of travel we do and the amount of international travel that we do as well. And personally, I had never experienced that jet lag process. I had been out of the country, but maybe to Brazil, Ecuador, somewhere in South America where the time change is not there. So I had not experienced that the jet lag myself until my first trip with the federation was to Sweden. And that's when I was like, okay, so I know all this information about jet lag. I've learned about it and I've read about it. And now I'm actually going through it, and now I can personally have that experience. And it's a good thing too, because now I know you know, what to tell my athletes, how are they going to feel, and like I know, okay, this what I read is true, like I'm feeling it. So we go through different processes. We every time we're going to do an international trip, for example, we always share. We have a jet lag pamphlet where we share information, and I go in there, me or one of my colleagues, and we talk about the different time zones. We talk about different snacks to eat during this plane trips, and then how to maybe adapt. This is information that's sent to the players maybe a week or two before we travel out, and we suggest like, okay, start adapting a week earlier to this time zone, and we start saying like, depends on where we're going, east or west, how many hours to start adapting their clock. So that's always very helpful for them to receive this information. And then once this is information that they receive pre-travel, and once we arrive to the place that we're traveling to, the country that we're going, then we have different methods for them to adapt. So sometimes it's depending on the age group, like using melatonin, or we tend to use some meditation as well, have some meditation time for them to kind of bring their adrenaline down, relax them, help them go into this into their sleep. And then also, just like I said, we hope that they start adapting a week before and then helping them. But one thing that we also work around a lot is how do we manage our schedule when in camp. So pre-camp, we start pre an international camp, we start preparing on our schedule for meals, our schedule for training. So usually we have like 1 or 2 days of adaptation of like, okay, do we have to train in the afternoon? Do we have to for like 2 days, so at least we get their sleeping cycle going. So it's been very interesting, and it's always a battle. You know, you try to help everyone to adapt as quick as possible, and then just some bodies will take a little bit longer. And this also, like you said, Sifu, this is part of when we go international into our camps, but also even if we do domestic camps, we have international players coming. So now we have individual players to work with and help them adapt to the local time.
So yeah, that's wonderful, Stephanie. So I would guess that a good part of the things on your list for jet lag are the same things that would be on the list for sleep promotion, sleep programs in your normal life when there isn't any form of jet lag going on. Does that make sense, Stephanie?
Yes, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
Sifu. And it's part of like you want to one thing is depends on the schedule when you're going, when you land, is it time for them to stay up, correct? We want to try to still start moving, shifting into the new time, living in that time. But sometimes, let's say you arrive to Spain at an early time, you want to try to keep the players up, and then when it's time to go to sleep, they're going to be energized. So you want to try to start using those methods that you would use in your normal sleeping routine to try to get your body to start relaxing, your mind to shut off, and then go into that sleeping cycle.
Is it common for dinner to tire people out?
Yes, also depends on kind of what you're used to, and I would say what you eat and the amounts of food that you eat. So something that we promote is if you have a higher carb meal, that's gonna get you a little bit more tired. So, like I mentioned earlier with the snacks during the flight, when we want to encourage sleeping certain hours on that flight, we encourage to have higher carb snacks, and that's what we will do at dinner time as well. We will want to encourage going to sleep. We will increase the amount of carbs that they have.
Is that the blood sugar dropping after 15, 20 minutes? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so it helps you start adapting, feeling a little bit more fuller and tired, and then kind of, like I said, start shutting off your body.
So yeah, I can see that filling you up. Carbs give you that
Hmm.
quick feeling of being full, and then they process more quickly, and then blood sugar lowering. It's interesting, when I was writing my book Sedentary Nation, I landed on a statistic that talked about heart attacks among people who were carrying extra weight, who are already at risk for heart issues. And take a guess why a lot of them have a heart attack, and maybe even have a heart attack and die at 5 or 6 in the morning.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
Not sure. What did you find?
It's their lowest point of blood sugar.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I before I had read that, I didn't know the relationship between heart attacks, our motor for our system. You
Hmm.
could talk about fat being the fuel and carbs being the fuel. Hopefully, not too much protein as our own protein as the fuel, but yeah, the protein from something we eat as fuel, fine. But you think about, let's say, think of a 380-pound non-fitness, very sedentary, channel flipping person. So blood sugar out of whack, digestion out of whack, sleep patterns, often the snoring. There's a word for snoring. I can't think of the word right now. Sleep apnea. And so some of them even wear a mask to help them sleep and to help them, because they stop breathing at certain times. They might do
Mm.
like us nodding off. It's kind of the same thing. They might breathe a couple loud snores and then not breathe and then go and kind of catch themselves. So it's very common with people carrying a lot of weight. So then the other issue is the blood sugar. So when they're not fat adapted, so they can't tap into their fat stores. I'm really good at losing weight. I'm like, I'm a 9.99 at losing weight. So I have to constantly figure out how to handle the diet, the intermittent fasting, the rest, the stress, etc., the weight training to keep weight on. And fortunately, right now, I'm in a zone. I'm 61, and I just was able to gain some weight this last 4 months, and I was doing a lot of work. And so I'm thinking, is it my age that's changing? Am I happy? Am I low stress? What's going on? And I will be able to report back to you after I've looked at this thing for 5 years and figure out if it's my aging physiology or what's happening. But that's a good thing for me. Over to Stephanie for some of her thoughts on obesity. And then we could talk about the thing that I've been doing, which is the sedentism of athletes. Historically, during their off season, like in the 70s, they would become sedentary in the off season, not as much anymore. Too much trainers, too much finances, too much losing your sponsors if you did something like that. And then the sedentism of athletes after they're done with their high performance career. But before we do that, did you have any thoughts on anything I said about the people who have too much weight and all of the issues that they had?
Yeah, Sifu, I think there's definitely different reasons why these people have obesity problems, and we've seen it a lot in the past years. And part of the problem, I mean, some do have a medical situation going on, and that they can't lose that weight. They're really trying, and there's something else going inside, so they definitely need that medical assistance and medical help. But there's also that other aspect of like the amount of things that have changed around the world, that people have become less active in the day-to-day activities. So in maybe the walking to your job, to your home, to the store, and the amount of like, okay, people maybe before used to carry bags uh, back home, or just the amount of activity and work that people do. And also, all the technology now, a lot of kids sitting at home and not playing outside. So I think we're starting to see a lot of that. And even in the last 3 years maybe, and I think we're gonna continue to see a change, and we're gonna learn also, how are people adapting to these changes with technology, how are people adapting to these changes in the world, and how can we continue to stay healthy and active, and work through that so we don't run into those health issues with obesity.
That's wonderful, Stephanie. So you talked a little bit about these changes affecting us now, and as somebody who spent some time in the public education system, I I will tell you that it goes back to even the late 80s. That's how old this sedentism epidemic is. The bad food thing was already there in the early 1900s. I mentioned this fitness pioneer Jack LaLanne with the sugar and the ice cream and the coffees. Cigarettes were common. So bad nutrition has been here a long time. Even the people on the farm, if they didn't have the finances to eat their own cows and their vegetables were in a depressed state that particular year, they might have been doing a lot of living off of potatoes, as we've seen in the 1800s, where they had 5 different famines in Ireland regarding the potato famine. So people living off of potatoes, you can get the full, there's a word for it, the full contingent is not the word I'm looking for, but it's something like that, of amino acids in a really good potato, not an industrial grade hybrid potato, but a historic 1800s potato. The full complement, I think, is the word, of amino acids in the potato. And those actually came from not Mexico, but I think the original, how Europe got their potatoes was from Chile. And if it's not Chile, it was another smaller than Mexico, South American country. Over to Stephanie for her thoughts on amino acids, potatoes, and the difficulty in affording a balanced meal throughout the history, and maybe for the modern person who can't afford Whole Foods and the farmer's market.
Yeah, definitely, Sifu. I think we go back to that same idea of like what's available to people, what is like you said, nowadays sometimes the healthier food are the most expensive. So, and then the harder to get, people are more gravitate to like a quick meal, quick cheap meal. And also in a day to day, if they're staying busy, they know it's like a quick stop at this fast food place, and it's not always the healthiest option. And like you said, it's very interesting how far along it comes and how it continues to grow. And like, do we see a change, like a positive change in it or not? Even though there's now so much education pieces to it, like so much other research, some other people that are getting into like different diets or reading different books about different products, vegetables, fruits, different protein sources. So I think there's always, I don't know if we're ever all going to be in that healthy side and lean bodies.
Yeah.
I think there's always going to be that change, but we obviously, the goal is to have a healthier population and all around the world.
When I think of an athlete who started out as a really playful, talented kid who couldn't take the grind, perhaps, maybe there's some more things that and I'm sure other people who follow this great athlete, but he, when you see his smile, it was like a permanent smile from this young Brazilian. Even on the indoor courts, when they played like on a basketball court, you saw the footwork, you saw his ability to dribble this thing, and he's smiling the whole time. It was like a euphoric state of joy. And I think the people didn't clobber him because they said, this guy is so cool. He's like the Michael Jordan of soccer. He does things that we can't do. Let's kind of watch him and protect him and not hammer him just to win the game. And but unfortunately, I think early in his career, but I didn't follow this closely, but friends of mine who do said it didn't take very long before he became a barfly. And I'm not sure if it was just beer or what he was drinking, but he was hanging out in bars. And that, of course, affects your sleep, affects your diet, affects your the way you treat other people, and then and affects your performance and your training and your play the next day. And your sponsors don't like that. Your team doesn't like that. Your teammates. And this is Ronaldinho. And I don't know. Before I said his name, did you know where I was going with that?
Yes, I think as soon as you started describing this athlete, I knew exactly who you were talking about.
So
I'm
did you know
also a
anything
huge
about?
fan.
Yeah, you're a fan. Do you know anything about how early in his life did it happen, in his teens, or when he was in his 20s doing all that heavy travel, when he became that partier type of a guy? And I'm not sure how long that lasted. I don't know all the specifics, but I do know from people who follow it that it really affected him in a negative way.
Yeah, I don't know how early it started, or because it could have started before it came uh, out in the public. He's one player that I did follow. He's probably one of the first players I started watching when I started playing. So like for me, he was one of the best player I had ever seen. And then, like you said, seeing how detrimental his career started, or went, and all the negative things that started coming from it. It also taught me a lot as an athlete, like what to pay attention to, and like what things can distract you or what can change. And I think it opened up a lot of like people's eyes to see what else was out there and what athletes also need to be aware of and careful with. And now it also helps me as a sports science or as a coach to not only focus on that science part of my job, but it's one thing that I carry with me a lot is like how can I also impact a player and help a player and their career in the long term, and kind of making them aware of like the situations of like, or this is what I've seen, this is what I've seen from other players, and help them, try to educate them on that. But yeah, it was a very, very sad story with such an amazing player that Ronaldinho was, and where a lot of people thought he was going, and then to see how quick his career started ending, and the negative aspects that it took. So obviously, there's still a lot of respect for this player, but it also teaches a lot of athletes of like I said, what to pay attention to and what not to do.
Yeah, and for those listening, I am not suggesting that you need to be a Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, and do heavy duty training for 20 some or 30 some years to be at this high level as a junior, as an adult, a late junior going into the pros at 17 or something like this, and then carrying on this perfect Tom Brady like career where you're doing everything right for as long as you can and damaging yourself, because a long career, of course, there's damage. Rafael Nadal, Federer, they're both, Federer had to retire from injury, and Nadal has been injured for plenty of times in his career, but now he's an older dude in his mid 30s, and he's was injured, so he got bounced out of the French Open in the first round. And Tom Brady, of course, a long career. It only takes a couple of more hits to create damage for your brain, which any football player who's been around for 1 year or 15 has already got some severe hits to their concussion type things happening, and just falling on the ground without even getting hit in the head is a concussed state with your brain moves from one side to the other. So there can be damage from that. So I'm not saying anybody like Ronaldinho has to have this long career. And I'm not to say don't have a party once in a while, but the default setting, if it is every night or 4 nights a week or 3 where you're getting back to the hotel at 4 in the morning, that's going to take its toll very quickly. Does that make sense, Stephanie?
Yes, absolutely. And I would agree with you, Sifu. It's obviously you don't, and that's what I try to tell athletes too. You don't want to fall into this box of like you're not allowed to do anything. You just work out, sleep, eat, and that's it. No, like you can have a life. You can go out with friends, you can hang out, but it's also being um keeping that in mind, that like how far do you take it, how often do you do it, and still taking care of remembering like you're an athlete. You're this is your job. I always tell people like you're doing what you love, but it's your job, it's what pays your bills. It's when you're at the pro level, it's taking care of your family. So you have your job duties as well, and that's to take care of yourself. And I think as we continue to mention some of these younger athletes that have a quick like they jump into fame real quick, or their success, it comes really quick. It's very important for them to have someone to guide them, to like help them through that process, because it's so easy at that age. I mean, I remember being that age. You see all the fun stuff. You can get very influenced by other people quick, and you always want to have someone to guide you through that, because yeah, that you at that age you're still learning a lot, and you're gonna experience so many other things that obviously, like you said, like it's you want to continue to learn, you still want to enjoy that part. It doesn't have to become this non-enjoyable job. Like you still want to, you love the game, so you want to play it, but also be smart and think about your long-term career and where you want to go.
Usain Bolt, Stephanie, loved to play soccer. Sprinting training is a lot of work, and it's very repetitive. Historic boxing training is the same thing. Mike Tyson's talked about it. Plenty of other famous boxers have talked about how repetitive it is to go to the gym, be indoors, and do that full circuit of training, which is very repetitive. They do so many abs every day. They do all their neck work every day. They do their shadow boxing, they do the speed bag, the heavy bag, and then they do a lot of other stuff. And now Usyk, who's probably the highest level in terms of a modern trained boxer and modern trained neurology for any boxer with all the modern techniques. This guy has just achieved his big heavyweight championship over Tyson Fury, who's 6'8", I think he is, or 6 foot, yeah, something like that, 6'7", and he won that based on all this modern stuff. But he was somebody who was up for the challenge of the grind. His training format takes in lots of other things. I don't remember if he was doing dancing, juggling, but they were doing lots of different things in his training to keep it from being as repetitive as the traditional 1960s, 70s, and 80s boxing training was. So that stuff I think is really cool. I don't know how much you folks in soccer are doing, but I imagine because those types of things work, the variety, we can talk a little bit about some of the things that you've seen and you've heard from other coaches that they're trying, that they're testing out: swimming, water polo, taking people to an amusement park, whatever it is to change up that neurology and biochemistry and the joy and euphoria. Over to Stephanie for some comments.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen it a lot in different sports, Sifu, and as well as something that we try to remember also. It's like, can we incorporate sometimes different activities that are still challenging, like getting the physical aspect that we need for the game, but challenging maybe in a different cognitive plays, where sometimes we'll use, and I've seen it too. I've seen it in pro soccer, where like maybe a recovery session, it's a basketball game, or they have a fun 7v7 basketball game, and it's like they're soccer players, yeah, but they're athletes too, and and you're still getting them to move. They're still enjoying it, and I've used something similar where like I'll do like a handball game, and they're still competing and moving and running, but now they're using their hands. Okay, it gives them a different cognitive load. Or you do maybe like a reaction game with catching a ball, so now they're doing different things. Maybe they wouldn't do that with their feet during a game or during training. So I think it's definitely It's good for them because, like I said, they're athletes, they're humans. There's different things that they do. Not all of them just play soccer and watch soccer. Like they enjoy other sports too. They enjoy other activities, maybe yoga, maybe something like you said, a museum, cultural arts, or something like that. And it's always good, not just for athletes, but and the general population as well, to keep just your brain thinking about different activities, different subjects, and it keeps your brain going and just like functioning different, and makes you think out of the box or react to something. So yeah, I think, like I said, in athletes and general population, it's always good to like stay involved in different activities.
Thanks, Stephanie. I just downloaded in my head while you were speaking the image of your soccer players age 18 to 32. Is that the average career span of these people?
Yes.
Something like that. So 18 to 32. And next time you have a day off, if there's something in the area, I downloaded canoeing and rowboating, because rowboating is fun, especially if you've never done it before, but it's not that hard to learn. It's like a balanced activity. You're doing your thing and you're out on the water, and it's smooth and it's fun, and you can splash each other and you can say things to each other. You can race each other. You can kick back when you get to an island and just hang out in the boat or hang out on the island. You can go to a swim. So there's a heck of a workout right there, lower body and upper body. Same thing with the canoe trips. You don't go to the 1700s and see a Cherokee Indian in a canoe that's not pretty ripped and pretty fluid in their stroke, right? And plus they had to make the canoe out of either leather or a log. And so there was a lot of work that went into it. So these are fit, agile, creative people. And I think that's what I downloaded. So if that works out for you and your team 6 months from now or 2 years from now, I hope you send me some of the pictures of you folks out on the water.
I'm definitely going to keep that in mind. Next time we're around an area that I know will have that, I'm going to be like, we gotta plan a trip with the team.
Yeah, you could tell them, you should say the elder statesman, Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid, also known as the stretched out version of Mr. Miyagi, who's Sifu Slim. He said, Stephanie, take them out on the water and be like water, my friends. Watch out.
I'm going to keep that in mind. Absolutely. I'm going to bring it up. And I will send you pictures when we do.
Send me the pictures. And if they don't ever want to do anything that you think I would approve of, just say, Sifu says, and then plant that in them. They don't know who I am, and they're not going to be able to travel and track me down unless they want to be on my podcast. But
right.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is, I mentioned my work on the Aging Athlete Project, and my public relations person who's known me for my whole life, he said, you are the world expert on the arc of the life of an athlete. That's something I've been studying my whole life, but I'm up to over 3,000 interviews now with athletes before, during, and after their high performance years. And that also includes their coaches, their therapists, their doctors, their parents, their siblings, their significant others. So I am kind of that guy. And so one of the things I wanted to mention to you is, did I tell you in any of or did you see that in any of my literature online or via email, the statistic of how many of these retired physical movers, so the Marines, the postmen, the dancers, the high school, college, and pro athletes, the military people, what the percentage of these people who continue physical activity on a daily basis after their sports or their movement career is over?
You probably mentioned it, or I read it somewhere, but I don't know the exact percentage. So I'm very interested to know that if you have it, Sifu. I can imagine, have an idea, it might be a lower percentage, unfortunately.
Ad divina. Take a guess. Ad divina.
Oh, let's be nice and let's go maybe 58%.
58% are still moving on a daily basis, according to Stephanie. Okay. In over 3,000 interviews. And then I go through the list of their 10 contacts that they played their sports with, or they worked at the post office with, the people they still see on Facebook or on the news if they're pro athletes, and now the person's a commentator, or they're in some kind of a regular golf tournament every year where they see these people. All these people I've interviewed, so you take 3,000 multiplied by 10, we're up to 30,000 people in the polling sample. Only 6 times since I started doing this poll in the last, that was 2008, only 6 times has somebody said my core group of people is over 10% that are doing daily physical activity.
Wow. That's I didn't expect that answer, to be honest.
And one of those 6 groups of people were women, college, ex-college soccer players. Some of them might have gone on to play some pro or semi-pro. And they, what they did, I asked her why, and I met this woman down in the inland from San Diego about 2017. And I could tell she was a soccer player because she had one of those really thin headbands. You know, that's a dead giveaway. Do any other female sports wear that thin headband like soccer players, female soccer players?
Not as much as female soccer players,
Yeah.
I would say.
Do you actually own one of those, Stephanie, those thin headbands?
I don't anymore, but I typically had the headband, or I would make one with pre-wrap. That's also very popular. Yeah.
So I said, how do you do it? Because she said her group is easily at least 60%. And I said, how do you do it? She said, we support each other like female power, gal power, that kind of a thing. And we're all on Facebook with each other. So if we've had kids or we've got a demanding job, demanding husband or significant other, we all support each other on getting into yoga, as you mentioned, getting to the gym, doing our walking, doing our calisthenics and this type of thing, or getting into a recreational soccer league or tennis game or dancing type thing. And it's a support. So this idea of support, you mentioned mentorship, coaching, therapy. If you are a high performance athlete and you leave a program, whether you're like a Soviet gymnast from the 70s who may have retired at age 16 because they developed into an adult at that point, it's hard to do all that type of thing when you're a fully grown person. Or you're a military person who does their 4 years and is now 23 or 26, and you leave, and in one day your whole group of people that were surrounding you, the whole fact that you had the cafeteria that was part of your military and you knew how to handle all those things, and now you have to go out and cook for yourself and go out to restaurants, and now there's the Burger King right down the street. So the whole framework of your previous, what would we call that, your entourage of people and your mechanism that you had to do your food and your training is gone as soon as you walk off the base, or as soon as you say goodbye to Stephanie, that you got, you're now 28 or 32 and now you're retiring from pro soccer. It all ends in one day. And that's where I hope to be able to come in and do some seminars along the way, online seminars, in-person seminars, show these people what maintenance fitness is, show these people how to cook some basic things. Like I cook big stews that last 3 days. That thing saves me in time and it saves me in energy. And I just take that stuff and I eat it cold. I don't re-nuke all of my food. I just take it and I eat it cold. And it didn't take any time to get used to it, but I acclimated to it. And that's what I normally do for my food. One big thing of stew in a pressure cooker. And then I add on maybe a fresh avocado and maybe some noodles with that on occasion, or some toasted bread and butter, like the best bread I can get. And that helps me do the food. But I'm on maintenance fitness. I'm not on transformational fitness. My maintenance, if I want to kick it up and do more performance, I just do more reps or more intensity, that kind of a thing. And now it's more of a performance fitness program. But once you leave maintenance and you gain the weight or you become weak and now your body's not functioning, now you have to do this performance or transformational fitness. That's the hard part. And that's why I believe in telling these athletes about that stuff and then doing retirement, pre-retirement seminars where we can talk about these issues so that they know how to flip the switch on that pivotal day when they leave Stephanie's care. Over to Stephanie for her thoughts.
Absolutely. It's something that I've seen Sifu, and I've seen it with people that were in sports with me. I've seen it with friends that went on to pro and now retired. I recently had a conversation maybe about 2-3 months ago with one of my best friends who just retired from professional soccer, and he was literally just retired this year. And I was telling him, like, you're gonna go through this phase of, I'm not that professional athlete anymore. Who am I? What am I going to do? How do I keep doing my life? I'm like, you're not going to wake up early and go to training anymore. You're not going to finish training and have your meals for you. You're not going to finish training and have a massage therapist or a workout session. Like, and you have to figure out now with your life, like, what are you going to do and how can I continue to stay active? And if I do go into an office job now, or like whatever your next step is, how do I balance that life? So it's very interesting, as you say. There's a lot of mentorship that needs to go into that, and I think for a while maybe it was a subject that wasn't spoken about a lot. So it's awesome to see now people like you, Sifu, or some other ex-athletes that are bringing this subject into the light, into public, and making other people aware, because it is very important. I think like you said, different aspects. It's the physical aspect, it's the emotional aspect, it's the mental, the mental well-being, and just of this transition of going from a pro athlete or college athlete into maybe part of the general population. And if you didn't build habits during your career, during that phase of your life, that are going to transition with you to your next phase, it's going to be difficult. Like you said, you're going to fall into that. I'm going to be a sedentary person, or I don't know how to cook. And they used to cook for me, and now, okay, the easiest thing is to go to a fast food place. Or now, when do I sleep? And I don't have someone to give me a workout. So do I go to the gym, or do I have another sport? Like, even if it's not, did I learn how to do another sport, or did I fall in love with another sport to stay active? There's so many sports now that you can still stay active, and it's a very interesting transition. And like you said, I think it's very important that all that information is out there, and that these athletes that are going to go through retirement, or that are going to college athletes that are not going to continue that activity, to educate themselves on how to continue that healthier lifestyle. And like you said, maybe it's not for like an end goal of like, I want to look better, or or I'm going to perform better. It's to maintain, like you said, maintain their fitness, maintain their health. At the end of the day, like, you want to add more years to your life and continue to be healthy. And I think it's definitely very important for them to learn this. And if they don't know, they haven't seen these interviews, or they haven't seen any educational piece out there, it's also very important for them to reach out for help, and try to figure out, okay, how can I help myself during that transition?
So Stephanie is going to, hopefully within the next year, reach out to her vast group of contacts on the web that are big Stephanie Dominguez followers, and use her beautiful smile from south of the border. And she's going to say, we're doing a webinar next Thursday, and I'm going to talk about this, and Sifu's going to talk about that. And we're going to bring this message to you to empower you to get to the euphoric level of mind, body, and spirit connection, so that you feel well 100% of the time. That's my goal. I want to be 100% well 100% of the time. Now, when I train hard or I sleep funny, of course, there are going to be some setbacks, but that's my ultimate goal, is wellness. Part of under my realm of wellness, yes, there's sports training, and there's improvement in my sports, or maintenance in my sport. That's great, but wellness is my overlying starting point. That's the base setting, and everything falls from that. All the diet, all the sleep, everything, wellness. And so, what do you think? Should we put a seminar together, Stephanie?
Let's do it. I think it's a great idea, Sifu. I'm all for it. I have a lot of contacts that need to listen to this. I probably will have a lot of contacts by that time as well. New ones that are in the process of moving from professional athletes into the next phase of their lives. So we definitely should do it.
We got to keep it going and build this. And then I'll retire at some point, and then you'll have somebody new, and then you'll retire, and we'll just keep going with the new blood, bringing this message to eliminate that last day syndrome. And that's really it. If you bring people through a program so they know where it's going, like even the military or college, they have guidance counselors in college and high school that are bringing you along and preparing you for an eventuality, and looking at what your goals are and what the opportunities are. And that's what we really want to do, is we want to look at the realities of these situations. We don't want to read about people getting depressed, turning to a substance or alcohol, and having like a life-changing, life-altering negative experience or the end of their life. We don't want to see those types of things. We want to let that neurology, that biochemistry create the daily balance and some euphoria, which is wonderful. So back to Ronaldinho, he's in this gym. He's 16 years old or 14, or I'm watching him play, and he's smiling the whole time as he's moving the ball, and there's somebody's coming to stop him, and he flicks it over and he catches it, and he's dribbling. He just can keep doing that. You don't even have to score. It's just so beautiful to watch him handling this ball like a magician, basically. And that's this euphoria. He's getting euphoria in the technique and the movement and the breathing, and he knows what he can do, and he's in his element, and he hasn't been ground down by the life of sponsorship and the competitive travel and the competitive of pressurized pressure cooker that is elite athleticism. So we want to bring the euphoria back, because that's like a drug, that a healthy drug that our body produces with endorphins and other things that are happening, plus our entire posture is doing its thing in this wonderful, healthy way. We can get out of a chair perfectly. We can reach down and pick something up. We can go to the driving range and golf, even if we're a pro soccer player. And we use our body in this beautiful biodynamic way. And that's the idea of thriving that I want to bring to these athletes during their career and post-career. Over to Stephanie for her final comments on that.
Yes, definitely. And I think that you mentioned something very important, Kiku, and it's that joy part of the game, and forgetting about that big pressure, right, of sponsorship, winning, and all that. And that's something that even now we use with current athletes. It's I've seen it where we're about to go and we were recently in a U17 World Cup, and we're about to go out in a game, and you see these athletes just feel all this pressure, and you kind of just have to tell them, hey, you love the game, enjoy the game, and let the rest of it take care at the end. Like, just go out there and enjoy. And as soon as you tell an athlete that, and you see that smile come back up, and kind of their shoulders just relax, and when you see them remember that moment. And I think that's very important, as well as we talked about this transitioning period of like remembering as an athlete those joyful moments, and why you did or why you do still do what you love. And then in that transition phase, what activities or what do you want to do now that brings you that same joy in life? And like you said, that's going to add to that wellness part of your life. So I think it's very important for current athletes, for retired athletes, to still find that joy. Like I said, playing the game, and then after, what brings you that same joy that was of you just kicking the ball around with no pressure and no sponsors on you, all of that, and just remembering those moments.
Wonderful, Stephanie. So probably a good time to end this first conversation. If you're open to it, I've got many more things I'd like to speak to you about. And maybe if you have a way for people to find out more about you or to contact you if they need you for speaking, coaching, these types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I can share my email. I'm also social media. I'm only active on Instagram, and I share a lot of my professional journey and just our trips, and sometimes little quotes or things for athletes, little messages that I like
Yeah,
to
not the
share as well.
email, not the email here on YouTube, but maybe your Instagram or any other things like that that are more less in your inbox type of a way to contact you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. My Instagram is open. Anyone's feel free to like get on there. I try to share a lot of this content, and like I said, I'm a sports scientist, but I'm a lot about how can I help impact an athlete during their career and the next phase in life. Just because I think in my life as an athlete that was very important. So anyone that wants to follow me is Stephanie A. Dominguez. Yeah, so it's just at Stephanie with Phanie, and then the letter A, and then my last name, Dominguez.
So that's good that you were able to get that with all of the millions of people out there. Yeah, interesting that when I got maintenanceworkout.com, which was my first website, I didn't think that in 2008 that should have been available. It shows you how much transformation and weight loss and getting ripped quick was being sold to people, not the idea of maintenance, which to me is so easy. It's like if you have a car that is in good condition and you want to keep it in good condition, or you keep it waxed, it's easier to wash it, and you're not doing this big overhaul and new paint job. And that's kind of the way I look at fitness. Keep this great thing. When I was 18, almost everybody in my high school graduating class loved sports, was fit, or was doing acting and dance. They were doing something. And you look at us on our graduation, you don't see much obesity. I would guess, my dad told me that in his graduating class, less than 6 people were really heavy people. And in my graduating class, certainly less than 15 people. And that's almost 400 people. And that's 1981 graduation. So now it's a different story. And the idea of maintenance is like foreign to people because they're not on maintenance when they're 18. So when they're 35 and they want to get healthy or lose pounds for their wedding, whatever, this idea of maintenance, they're like, what? I'm not good. So why do I need to maintain? We can talk about that in a future conversation. So we have Stephanie's way to contact her, and I'm Sifu Slim at sifuslim.com. If you want to send a contact through the contact form on the website, that's great. And we're asking you to please give us a like and a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if that works out with you. And Stephanie, it's been a pleasure. Great vibe coming from Chicago where you are. And I'm glad to learn a little bit about your story and some of the training modalities that you use. And I'm going to ask you about periodization the next time, because I have an issue with my periodization from 2 days ago that I will remember, because it was a really good thing to learn. And then for people at home and watching this on YouTube, you could look up Stoicism. That's something that even Stephanie could tap into. And that's a great thing to look into, about the highs and lows and how to handle the emotions of sports. Stoicism goes back to the Greek philosophers. And what was the other thing I wanted you to look up? Oh, the word euphoros, which is where the word euphoria comes from. The ancient, so interesting, Stoicism from the Greeks and euphoros from the Greeks. Look those two things up and see if you can connect the dots on both of those. But we talked about a lot of things related to the word, ancient Greek word euphoros, in our conversation today. And I think Stephanie could use that to dazzle her soccer players and the other coaches. Hey, check out Euphoros. My pal Sifu Slim across the ocean found this when he was writing one of his books, and he's been using it ever since. So I'm passing that little tidbit on to Stephanie, and she can pass it on to her players, especially the ones who are looking for Euphoros out in the nightclubs. There it is.
Absolutely.
Any
Thank
last
you,
words, or should we
Sifu.
just wind it down, Stephanie?
No, I mean, thanks again. I just want to say thank you again for opening up this space and for having me here. It's been great. And I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. I'll look these words up and next time we can talk about it more.
Way cool. Muy bien, que todo el mundo tenga un buen día, buen fin de semana y una buena vida de salud y de bienestar. Aloha.
Eso sí.